So, welcome to Warsaw. It's cold. It was hailing this morning. No, not that kind of Elon Musk hailing, but let's not go there. And we're going to talk about Ukraine and US and Russia. Oh my gosh, 3 years in just a couple of days since the war started, and the full scale war, because of course this has been going on for longer than 3 years. It's been over 10 years now since Russia took over Crimea and big part of the Donbass and all of that. And now Trump has come in, and Trump wants to make a deal with Putin, and everyone is up in arms because it looks like Ukraine is being excluded from the negotiating table as well as other European powers. The thing that's rich about this is that the Ukraine war was facilitated by money sent to Russia by EU countries, especially Germany and other countries that bought Russian energy, but primarily Germany. Germany is the country with the insatiable need for cheap energy. It was the foundation of their economy. That's why their economy is not doing well these last few years, because the Nord Stream pipeline is not working, although it's being repaired, and I'm sure Germany would love to see it going again. But the question is, do you bring people in who are going to negotiate with Russia about ending the war, and whatever deals will be related to that? The people who had the terrible strategic vision, no strategic vision, basically. They just wanted the cheap energy and they didn't care what happened further to the east, whether it was Ukraine or maybe the Baltics or whatever. Germany is a part of NATO, but it's the shakiest part of NATO, and that's the problem with NATO, is that everything relies on the United States, and that's why the United States, I believe, is doing what it's doing, because Germany is not a trustworthy partner to bring in. Why would they bring in, especially now? Olaf Scholz is going to be gone in a few weeks. They're the German elections. He's not going to be the prime minister again. So why would they bring in a guy and his people to negotiate with Russia when they're the ones who led to this? They didn't want to help Ukraine when the war started. Remember, they had a problem. They sent old helmets. They wanted to send some, older equipment. They didn't want to deal with the situation. They were sitting on their hands waiting for Russia to roll up Ukraine, hoping that they could make a deal with Russia and get back to business as usual, keep the energy flowing as quickly as possible. That didn't happen, so they had to change tack. They did end up providing more and more weapons, albeit very slowly and reluctantly. They don't want to antagonize Russia more, and they haven't wanted to, because they want to do business with them, because that's primarily their focus. It's on business and having a strong economy and money. So it's a very materialistic society. Essentially, it's a materialistic society. You're never going to confuse Germany for a Christian society that's focused on making Europe strong and unified. That's the rhetoric, but they want the control because that's what facilitates their business interests, to put it bluntly. So why don't we look at one article here, and we can see together what we're looking at. And like I've done before, I think it's good to look at this through the prism of the mass media and how things are spun. Well, first time using this software, so let's see, maybe I can kind of make a pose for the thumbnail. Maybe I'll do something like this. Okay, so we have Zelensky and Trump here. And just a little note about diplomacy, I think this is worth mentioning. So Trump doesn't like Zelensky, and Zelensky doesn't like Trump. Zelensky has been critical of Trump throughout the last 3 years, which has been stupid, and like the stupidity of the European leaders who are excluded from the talks now because they were attacking Trump. This is another factor. I don't even think that fact that the European countries, especially Western Europe, facilitating the Russian war, paying them all that money for their energy and building their war machine essentially, is as important as the fact that they repeatedly attacked and assaulted Trump over the last 3 years, kicking a man while he's down, and now he's not down anymore. And now, they had an emergency meeting in Paris, which isn't going to do anything. The European leaders, Ursula von der Leyen, the head of the European Commission, and Macron and all that, they were kissing cheeks, in Paris, but that's not going to do anything. Okay, and just one little thing more to add to that. While Zelensky was criticizing Trump and he's this and that, Putin was not. So I know there's a lot of BS rhetoric about how Trump is in Putin's pocket. That's totally untrue. But the dynamic now is that Putin was, despite this war and all that, he was not criticizing Trump because he knew that Trump could come back to power. Trump, of course, had been president while Putin was in power. Putin's been in power for 25 years, so that's another story. But Putin has dealt with Trump before, so he knows who he's dealing with, and it doesn't make sense to insult him. And you can make a strong case that the war in Ukraine, the hot war, what's been going on the last 3 years, wouldn't have started had Trump been president in 2022. Certainly, if Trump was, on Putin's payroll or whatever, however you want to say it, why would Putin not have started the war when Trump was president? It's because he didn't control Trump. He wasn't sure of Trump's reactions, and he decided not to do it. He decided to do it after seeing the pathetic withdrawal of the United States forces from Afghanistan under Biden, and that's why he decided to attack. It was, I'm sure, tougher, the war. He didn't expect it to be the way it is, with the huge loss of life and all that, although loss of life is not a big deal for Russian leaders. But in any case, now Trump is back in the driver's seat, and Putin is in a much stronger position because he was not insulting Trump all along. And Putin, as the head of one of the main nuclear powers in the world, not quite a superpower, but someone you have to deal with, he's going to give Putin and Sergei Lavrov, the Russian foreign minister, and whatever his people, a lot more time of day than he is to Zelensky, the president, the unpopular president of the country that is surviving because of billions of dollars of U.S. aid. Were it not for the U.S. aid, Ukraine would be under total Russian control. So, but let's get into this article and see what we can figure out together. So, panic in Kyiv as U.S. president demands higher share of GDP than Germany's First World War reparations. And I don't have the exact numbers, but I know that Germany didn't pay all of their reparations. And that was part of the problem with World War I, is that both the demands on Germany were harsh, and at the same time, they weren't enforced. So it created a lot of anger in Germany, in part which led to the rise of Hitler in the early 1930s, when he rose to power, and he started back in the 20s. But in any case, Ukraine is not Germany. They're not the aggressor, so it's an odd comparison. And so here we have Trump glaring. Oh, and I didn't read the title. Trump's confidential plan to put Ukraine in a stranglehold. You can see Zelensky's eyes are practically bugging out. All right. So the gist of this article is that a proposed deal from the United States leaked that claims a huge amount of money should be paid from Ukraine as part of the deal to end the war. So Donald Trump's demand for $500 billion payback from Ukraine goes far beyond U.S. control over the country's critical minerals, covers everything from ports and infrastructure to oil and gas, and the larger resource base of the country. So the question is put forth by any reasonable observer, if the United States paid over $100 billion, and they give the numbers here, and they say that it's not, that Trump is asking for 500 billion, but the U.S. only spent 175 billion, though Trump says 300 billion, and that really it's not, even 175 billion because 70 billion went to defense contractors. In any case, when you are saved by someone and they pay a lot of money to save you, then you're in a position to pay them back, you should pay them back with interest. I think that's reasonable. If Poland had the opportunity at the end of World War One or at the end of World War II to give all their gold reserves or whatever they could and licenses for different things to be utilized, minerals and resources, coal, for example, in Poland, to maintain their independence, they definitely would have done so. I can guarantee that. Poland did not have this option, and I must make this political comparison because Poland is where I am, of course, it's what I've studied, and it's a country that was absolutely betrayed and sold to Russia for no gain. Basically, the gain was that there wouldn't be a war over Poland and over Stalin taking over this part of Europe. But there was no deal. It wasn't like, oh, Poland, you'll lose 20% of your country, but you'll keep 80%. You'll have a free country, you'll have free elections, which is what Ukraine is being offered. So for me, pardon me if I'm not highly sympathetic to Ukraine's plight. Of course, I am towards the suffering of the people, but I also see that Ukraine is in a world of difference better position than Poland was at the end of World War II, and we're not even going to go to what Ukrainians were doing, killing Poles at the end of World War II. Over 100,000 Poles murdered by Western Ukrainians, and that's the subject for another video. But it does tie into the fact that Ukraine has not done very much to pay Poland back for the tons of support that Poland has given and continues to give to Ukraine, funding education for the children of Ukrainians in Polish schools, giving them monthly Social Security payments like Polish citizens who've worked the system for years have gotten, except the Ukrainians, of course, haven't paid into that system. Not nearly to the same degree as Poles have. Going back to the mass murder and genocide of Poles by Western Ukrainians at the end of World War II, known as the Volhynia Massacre, although it went beyond that geographic region. The Ukrainians have denied the exhumation and burial of these people, as is the Catholic Christian tradition that Poles would like to carry out. Of course, this is a difficult subject for them because it undermines the narrative of their infinite victimhood to Russia when there are bodies of especially children and women and old people rotting under their soil that they don't want the world to see, though they don't want the world to know anything about that. Of course, I'm not blaming the current Ukrainians for perpetrating those murders, but their ancestors did that, and they should know about it, the details of what happened there, but they don't know about it. But again, that's maybe a subject for another video that should be treated, a subject that should be treated with greater depth. And of course, it's something very serious. But going back to this article, so I find the comparisons odd. I don't know why they're mentioning that it's like a new Versailles. The Versailles Treaty, of course, came as a result of the Versailles Peace Conference at the end of World War I, and it created new countries, new borders established. It led to the fall of empires. Of course, the Austro-Hungarian Empire, the German Empire was changed. The Ottoman Empire also fell as a result of World War I. So, but it's strange to compare this to that. And I think they're trying to, and it's not done in this article, but they want to, and I saw this on a cover of a magazine of Trump being like the new Neville Chamberlain. Like, Neville Chamberlain came back from meetings with Hitler and the Munich conference, and he talked about peace in our time. He was waving a piece of paper, the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. And of course, that was not the end of aggression from Germany. That really uh, pushed Hitler, encouraged him to continue acquiring new territory. But I don't see that comparison at all here, because I don't see Putin being emboldened by what Trump is doing, as long as Trump maintains the strength and the projection of power as an individual and as the American nation that he has in his previous administration, and that he has been doing so far in the first now month of his new administration. So the question is, should Ukraine pay America back? And I answered that already. I believe they should. Whether it should be 500 billion or 300 billion or 700 billion, that's an open discussion. I don't think this is anywhere near to being completed. This is like Trump in his Art of the Deal, and even the author, to her credit, says this, although I don't think she really understands it. My style of, this is Trump from Art of the Deal. My style of deal making is quite simple and straightforward, says Trump in his book, The Art of the Deal. I aim very high, and then I just keep pushing and pushing and pushing to get what I'm after. So this 500 billion of Ukrainian resources that supposedly is going to cover the payback for what the U.S. did for Ukraine is a starting point, I think. And it might not even lead to anything, but it is meant to put Zelensky in his place, and as a starting point for negotiations. It's a difficult question whether Ukraine should be involved with these initial negotiations. Keep in mind that this is just the beginning of the talks, and everyone is up in arms that it isn't being done the way it was done before. But keep in mind that the way things were done before, the Minsk meetings in Belarus and the negotiations, Macron calling Putin several years ago. So the uproar about Trump calling Putin is ridiculous, because there are all kinds of back channel talks. Olaf Scholz, the prime minister of Germany, also was talking to Putin. So they've all been talking to Putin for years. So let's not get up in arms that Trump had a call with Putin. But I think this is the opening of negotiations. Trump wants to be seen as strong. I don't see the advantage for Trump of just selling out to Putin, whatever that would mean. I mean, the fact is that Ukraine is going to lose roughly 20% of its territory. I had a talk back at the Channing House in Palo Alto in May of last year, and it hasn't really changed. So go back and check out that video if you want to see what I was talking about then. And then think about what other analysts were talking about then and what they're talking about now, and why don't you consider where you're getting your information from, who these people are being funded by, what think tanks they're associated with, what defense contractors fund those think tanks, what globalist or neoliberal organizations fund the media and the institutions that put out this media attacking Trump, being supportive of the deadbeat European leaders like Scholz and Macron who led to this catastrophe, and understand that they have no business negotiating with Putin at this point. As a Polish commentator, I, of course, am very concerned because the Polish leadership is pathetic. We have Donald Tusk, who's the prime minister, who the Trump administration does not want to work with, because he is known, and it's very clear now, it was just more of a Polish thing, but now it's very clear that he just does whatever Germany wants him to do. So he's not a good partner. General Kellogg, Trump's emissary to, I believe, to Russia, or to have these talks with the various countries in the region relating to ending the war. was in Poland yesterday, and he didn't meet with the prime minister. Pete Hegseth was in Poland, and I just found this out yesterday. He was in Poland. This is a little scandal, shows the ineptitude of the current Polish government. Pete Hegseth was in Poland, and he met with the defense minister of Poland, and there was a woman translator there who retweeted the day before this meeting a tweet by her husband criticizing Hegseth for being a buffoon or something like that, incompetent, tattooed, this and that. And the guy, besides the crude, stupid comment that should have no place being retweeted by a translator who presumably has, security clearances and is privy to these conversations, and it just looks bad. Her husband, the one that she retweeted this stupid tweet from, was a former communist secret agent, so trained in Moscow, tied to the old order, to the Polish People's Republic, the communist Poland. And these are the people that are still in power and making fools of themselves. So, pardon my frustration, but we're just scratching the surface here. I'm not going to read this entire article, but I wanted to give you just my thoughts on what I'm seeing so far, because as I've told you before, I don't just see this as okay, here's the news and let's talk about the news. The news is mostly a manipulation, and you have to read between the lines, and even then you have to look to different sources. If you just go to the a site that it just has gone off the rails, the Drudge Report, a site I used to like and respect, but it's just a propaganda outlet. But you still, you have to get some news from some information, basic information. You have to pluck it like feathers out of a chicken, selectively, to find out what's going on as far as the basic facts, and then filter out all the opinionated manipulation. So the Drudge Report, and just here to give you an idea about this, you have the Cuban and the Russian, so Sergei Lavrov, the Russian foreign minister, and the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio. Reset in Riyadh, they're meeting in Saudi Arabia, Riyadh. Kyiv left out, terrible. F Trump's deal, and I'm not going to spend time on this article right now, but there's an article about veterans of the Ukraine war, mercenaries, people who went there to fight for idealistic reasons or for money or for whatever, and they're saying just stupid, terrible things about, how Trump should have been, too bad the assassin missed, and all these things, and just idiotic things. I hope the Secret Service visits these morons, but it just shows how crazy people are, and what they're willing to do to undermine Trump. Here you have the final article, Ukraine to be carved up. Ukraine is going to lose 20% of its territory. Roughly 20% of its territory is occupied by Russia. You're not going to do anything about that. You're not going to start World War III to help Ukraine recover territory that was established by the Soviet Union for them. They never fought to have the borders that they have. Sorry. There's a huge Russified population, especially in eastern Ukraine. Ukraine is going to have to do the best it can with the people it has, and which is increasingly or decreasing by the day. Ukraine doesn't have the population to cover the entire territory that it lost, so it needs to attract people back. It needs the fighting to stop. It needs to rebuild infrastructure, and I hope these talks are the beginning of that. Of course, I'm wary of Putin and Russia. It's not a country you can trust at all. They've done terrible things in the past and present and will in the future. But it's better than a forever war, another forever war. So so we're going to wrap up there. This is my first attempt at this new software, so pardon me if things were a little chaotic, but let me know in the comments if you think that I'm wrong, or what your opinion is on this matter. And we will end things there. Thank you for listening, and I will talk to you later. All right, bye from Warsaw.